Every morning, when the first rays of sunlight touched the sleepy town, an elderly man named Rohen walked slowly through the narrow stone path that led to the park near the river. He carried a small cloth bag with a piece of bread, a folded newspaper, and a rusted pocket watch that he never really used anymore. The park was quiet that early, just the whisper of wind brushing through the trees, the distant chirping of birds, and the soft creak of the wooden benches that lined the walkway. Rohan always chose the same bench, the one beneath the old banyan tree whose roots curled into the soil like ancient fingers. He sat there, looking across the river, watching life move. Children walking to school, vendors setting up their stalls, stray dogs chasing shadows. For everyone else, it was just another morning, but for Rohan, it was a ritual that kept him connected to the world, even when the world seemed to have forgotten him. Years ago, that same bench had been filled with laughter. His wife, Mira, used to sit beside him, feeding pigeons and teasing him about his slow reading. They would talk about small things, neighbours, dreams, the weather, old songs. And though nothing they said was extraordinary, it was everything that made life feel complete. But when she passed away, the silence that followed didn't just fill his house, it followed him everywhere. Still, he came to that bench every day, not to forget, but to remember. Some days, he spoke softly to the empty space beside him, as if she was still there. On other days, he just watched the world move on without him. One morning, as he unfolded his newspaper and adjusted his glasses, he noticed a small boy standing near the tree, staring curiously at him. The boy looked around 7 or 8, with messy hair and a backpack slightly bigger than his shoulders. He didn't speak, just watched the old man quietly before sitting on the other end of the bench. Rohan glanced at him and smiled faintly, but the boy didn't smile back. He seemed lost in thought, fidgeting with the strap of his bag. After a few minutes, Rohan asked, "Skipping school, are you?" The boy shook his head and said softly, "Just waiting." His voice carried a sadness that felt too heavy for someone so small. They didn't talk after that. The boy left when the sun climbed higher, and the man assumed he'd never see him again. But the next morning, the boy returned. Same time, same spot, same quietness. And the next day, and the next. Sometimes he'd bring a piece of bread, sometimes just sit silently, kicking at the dust. Slowly, without realizing, Rohan began to wait for him. The bench that had once held only the memories now had new company. They spoke little, but somehow the silence between them grew comfortable. One day, when the wind was cool and the trees were shedding their leaves, Rohan finally asked, "Who are you waiting for, son?" The boy looked up at him and whispered, "My dad. He used to bring me here before he went away for work. He said we'd come again, but it's been many months." The old man's chest tightened. He nodded, understanding too well what it meant to wait for someone who might never return. From then on, Rohan brought an extra piece of bread every morning. They fed the pigeons together, shared stories about silly things, broken kites, stubborn dogs, and favourite sweets. The boy began to smile more often, and the old man's laughter returned, soft at first, like an echo of his past. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months. The seasons changed, but their bench remained the same, a quiet witness to two souls who found warmth in each other's company. The boy's father never came, but the child stopped looking sad when he talked about him. Maybe because, in some small way, Rohan had become the company he needed. Morning, the boy came running with a drawing in his hand. 2 stick figures sitting on a bench under a big tree, one tall, one small. Beneath it, he had written in uneven letters, "My friend." Rohan held the drawing with trembling fingers and felt his eyes blur. He placed his hand gently on the boy's head and said, "You've made this old bench young again." The boy grinned, not fully understanding the weight of those words, but feeling their warmth anyway. Years later, when Rohan grew too weak to walk on his own, people often saw that same boy, now a young man, sitting on the same bench every morning, watching the sunrise, holding a folded newspaper, and sometimes leaving a piece of bread on the seat beside him. And if you looked closely, you could almost believe that the wind that rustled through the banyan leaves carried the faint sound of two old friends still talking softly to each other.